Next on Newsmax Prime, partisanship and the new populism. Democrats and Republicans react strongly to party power plays. So, how will this all play out in November? At the Supreme Court, 8 is not enough. The vacancy on the bench prompts the High Court to punt the contraceptives case brought by the Little Sisters of the Poor. So does this add up to a big win for those Little Sisters? Plus, the New York Times gives Donald Trump a tough time over his treatment of women. But one of the women interviewed by the Times says the gray lady got the story wrong. Imagine that. Unapologetically on the right, Newsmax Prime starts right now. Good evening and welcome to the Monday night edition of Newsmax Prime. I'm J.D. Hayworth. Of prime interest tonight, pushback from the populists. Over the weekend, a pair of state conventions provided ample evidence of dissatisfaction on both sides of the aisle. But as John BACHMAN reports, Democrats and Republicans are reacting in different ways.
Yeah, that's right, JD. I think it's fair to say that both the Democratic and Republican parties failed to grasp how populism would impact the primaries. But based on what we just saw at the state party conventions in Nebraska and Nevada over the weekend, only the Republican Party seems anywhere close to unity.
Unruly clashes between Bernie Sanders and Hillary Clinton backers at the Democratic Party's convention in Nevada. Sanders supporters accusing the state party of cheating on the delegate count.
The sheriff's department is coming into the building and trying to force us to leave.
Meanwhile, in Nebraska, a so-called smackdown of Senator Ben Sasse at the GOP state convention. Sasse, the Never Trump faction's poster boy, had a push for a third-party candidate to challenge Trump, but it was overruled by Cornhusker state GOP loyalists. A political reporter from the Omaha World Herald tweeting, it was a lopsided vote. The ayes in the room of more than 400 had an audible win to defeat Sasse. Only about 6 or 8 yelled nay.
Mitt Romney and other members of the GOP establishment are intensifying efforts to find an independent candidate to keep Donald Trump from winning the White House. They've reached out to Nebraska Senator Ben Sasse, former presidential candidate John Kasich, and even billionaire Mark Cuban.
The only reason anyone's talking about Ben Sasse is because he was one of the first people to come out, against Trump.
The rebuke of Sasse in Nebraska and the Never Trump movement elsewhere proves the Republican Party is clearly coalescing around Trump and the populist voters he's been able to attract to the GOP's tent. However, the clash of Sanders and Clinton supporters in Nevada says the Democrats still have much further to go.
Now, it does seem like each day that passes, there's less of an appetite for a third-party run from the right, but on the left, at least one prominent politician is calling for a third-party run for Bernie Sanders. That would be Donald Trump. He tweeted today, Bernie Sanders is being treated very unfairly or very badly by the Dems. The system is rigged against him. He should run as an independent. Run, Bernie, run. JD, back to you.
Very interesting, John. And now for this quick reminder, it's our intention to take your calls for the next hour at 1-877-NEWSMAX. That's 1-877-639-7629. Appreciate your calls, questions, and comments, and we will get to them shortly. Now let's bring on our panel. We are pleased to have on this Monday evening, Skyping in from Utica, New York, pollster John Zogby of Zogby Analytics. John currently serves as the director of the Keenan Center for Entrepreneurship and Ethics at his alma mater, Lemoyne College. It's worth noting John is also the co-author of the book First Globals, Understanding, Managing, and Unleashing Our Millennial Generation. And from Northern Virginia via Skype, it's presidential historian Craig Shirley. Craig's also the president of Shirley and Bannister Public Affairs, and he is the author of Last Act, The Final Years and Emerging Legacy of Ronald Reagan. Gentlemen, thanks for coming in. Craig, first, the historical perspective. Does this wave of populism surprise you?
No, actually, JD, it doesn't. We've had many waves of populism in American history, starting with Jefferson and his rejection of the Federalists and trying to take America back, against sedition acts. He lowered taxes. He released newspaper editors that had displeased Adams that have been in prison for criticizing the government. It was renewed again with Andrew Jackson and his throwing up the corruption that was gathered in Washington. We've seen populism, Teddy Roosevelt and his election in 1904, and Ronald Reagan in 1980. Populism and conservatism are not exactly alike, but they are they're kissing cousins.
So it's nothing new, and it seems that history is repeating itself, or at the very least rhyming. John Zogby, let me go to you since you're our resident pollster. It's very interesting seeing the answers we got in West Virginia after that primary where Bernie Sanders won big in that Democrat survey. An exit poll was taken, and get this, 75% of Bernie Sanders supporters say they will not back Clinton. Now, we heard John BACHMAN mentioned Donald Trump's tweet today. Is there almost a de facto alliance of populism between Trump and Sanders?
There's a burgeoning one. You know, how large it'll be in the end, I don't know. I mean, there are obviously some ideological differences, at least the way that the two men are presenting themselves. The West Virginia exit poll does not surprise me at all. That's a state that Hillary Clinton just simply was not going to do well in. That may be a hyper unique circumstance because of, you know, her trash talking the coal industry. But over the longer haul, this Democratic primary battle is really something to watch. It looks like there are going to be some really hard feelings, and even if Bernie Sanders probably endorses Hillary Clinton in the final analysis, Elizabeth Warren maybe comes on and gets on the ticket, you know, the darling of progressives, there may still be some lingering bad feelings.
Gentlemen, it is worth noting, and Craig, maybe to you, a little game of connecting the dots. We heard that Sheldon Adelson plans on donating $100 million to the overall efforts to elect Donald Trump. Now, it's worth remembering that Sheldon Adelson is pretty close to Newt Gingrich. Is this a sign, in your opinion, Craig, that Newt could in fact turn out to be Trump's number two?
Well, it's an intriguing proposition, isn't it, JD? You know, Newt solves a lot of Donald Trump's problems, is that he's an outsider. As you know, you worked with him. He's never been a member of the establishment, but he speaks establishment when he needs to. He also has good relations with the party and with other elements. So he would actually solve, I think, and be a kind of a unique choice to bring together the party. And as we all know, united conventions tend to win in the fall. Divided conventions tend to lose in the fall.
Let's go to the phones for the first time tonight. From New York, we've got Teresa on the line. Hi, Teresa. Welcome to Newsmax Prime.
Hi. Well, I'm calling because, I mean, this Hillary Clinton, okay? What went on in Benghazi, okay? We really never got an answer about that. Now, when the pilots were on Fox 5, okay, they were all set up that night. They were all set up to go to Benghazi.
Right, we've heard that. Just to give them some background, Teresa, just to explain to our interviewers, we have heard from various service members that they're at Sigonella at our air bases. They were ready to go and they never got the call. And that's what concerns you, that no one is holding Hillary accountable, correct? We seem to have lost Teresa, but it's worth noting, and it points out some of the frustrations and some of the difficulties Mrs. Clinton will have not only with Democrat voters, but with voters at large. Back to the political battles, it is worth noting what transpired in Nebraska over the weekend, where Republicans said they would take no sass from Senator Ben Sasse. You heard about that censure. You heard about the report that seemingly the senator was reprimanded by a 400-8 vote. Senator Sasse did step up and address the state party convention, acknowledging the divide within the GOP. Let's look and listen.
There are political issues about which we have some disagreements in the room. I don't plan to linger on any of those today, but I want to acknowledge that I know that they exist.
He wants to acknowledge they exist. John Zogby, this can't be really helpful to his political health, can it?
No, and he's got to worry about that down the line, you know. But this this, in the short term, this never Trump movement has really fizzled and has become, frankly, almost a joke. And so the irony here is that it looks like that the Republicans may be getting their act together sooner than the Democrats do. And that maybe, maybe or maybe not, there'll be some bloodletting in Cleveland, but at least what it looks like now is people are starting to rally. They saw some polls, and it looks like this could be a competitive race after all. And but I do believe this, Senator Sass notwithstanding, if Donald Trump wins on November 8th, it'll be a Donald Trump victory and not really a GOP victory. I think the GOP now are just scrambling to get on board a train that has left the station already.
Well, we could go on about the historic permutations of something like that on both sides of the aisle, but let's go back to the phones to Poland, Indiana for Debbie. And Debbie, I understand you have a different take about Hillary Clinton.
Yeah, she should be cleared. She had nothing to do with that Benghazi. And I was watching that NBC MSS show where the FBI released her tapes and said they were all cleared.
Well, that's interesting. When it comes to Benghazi, we've had parents of those who perished say that, their own words, that Hillary Clinton lied to them. And whatever became of that filmmaker? Remember what we heard a few years ago, Debbie, that there was some sort of documentary that apparently that was on YouTube that inflamed the Arab Street? Do you believe that was true?
I shot a dog on my property. She's the only one that would do anything about these law enforcement officers. And my husband's a veteran, and these dogs are chasing people, and the prosecutor wouldn't even prosecute these law enforcement officers.
All right. It's an interesting point you are making. I'm not quite sure the analogy of shooting dogs on your property equates with what transpires to 4 Americans slain in Benghazi. Be that as it may, let me just turn to Craig Shirley, because even with Debbie right there, from the other side of the aisle, you hear just a kind of basic anger and emotionalism. This campaign, will it, in 15 seconds for this, Craig, will the voters just react in their gut rather than their brain to pull the lever for whomever in November? 15 seconds.
Some will approach it intellectually, others will approach it emotionally, just as they have with every 4 years with every presidential election going back to the time of George Washington.
Very good. Craig, we're going to ask you to stick around. John Zogby, as always, we appreciate your insights, and more phone calls are coming your way. We always enjoy hearing from you at 1-877-Newsmax. But when we come back, the Supreme Court with the undecision. We'll explain.